if you've been in a car wreck and if you survive, you're bloody, you're limping, and you walk in, and the church is supposed to be our hospital, right? That's what we say. We're our hospital for sinners. Yeah. So you come in limping, and people look at you and like, hey, how are you today? You're like, I'm bleeding. Like, is that not an indicator? Like, what do you mean? Well, how am I doing? I just got a divorce. And it's like, well, you should go to the men's retreat this weekend.
No.
Why? How is that going to help me? Your program, how is that going to help me? I'm dealing with something that y'all are talking about, how to be a better husband. I think that's the theme this weekend. Not for me.
Yeah.
And then the pastor or the doctor is up on stage telling you, hey, Genesis 1:2, cars aren't supposed to be wrecked. It's like, yeah, I don't need that. That's not helping me. I've been in a wreck. I'm bloody. Who here is going to minister to me? And the answer is, I didn't find it.
Since the pandemic, so many of us have been involved with life-changing circumstances. It may be a change of job, maybe a change of states or different things that you're involved with. Certainly with work, we're hearing a lot of changes with occupation. And I know for sure each of us face decisions that we never thought we would have had to make. Today, I'm talking with my good friend, Todd Turner, about the decision of whether to divorce or not, and the resources that he has come up with regarding going through a divorce, especially in the Christian context. So Todd, thank you for being with me today.
I'm so glad to have this conversation with you. Thanks for having me.
Todd, you started a podcast a while ago called the UnYoked Podcast. Tell me how that got started.
Certainly didn't want to, just like divorce, right? God sometimes just puts you down a path, and it was more of a reaction. The reality was it took me a long time to navigate and travel through my divorce. The thought of helping somebody was a foreign idea. I was just trying to help myself. But just to be quite honest, when you date, when you get out of the married community, right? Like at church, sometimes you're in marriage groups or family groups, and when you're single, you hang around a lot of single people. And that's what happened to me is the more women I met and dated, even men that I hung out with and sort of elbow to elbow with, I realized how much bad advice there was out there and how much hurt there was in the Christian community. And I just started having long conversations with people, and somebody said, you ought to write this down, or they would say, can I ask you another question? Can I ask you another question? And I thought, why not just capture all these thoughts?
Yeah.
And that's what really birthed the whole UnYoked podcast idea.
Yeah. You went through a divorce, 6 years ago?
Almost,
right?
Yeah.
And at the time, like, we've been friends for so long, and it was that shell shock for a while of, I cannot believe I'm going through this.
Mm-hmm.
And as we have talked in the past few years, you've said, I don't know who I could talk to because they would either say something or assume something.
Right.
And I was trying to keep my head above water. One thing I found interesting in a recent statistic is that within religious communities, Protestant evangelicals have the highest divorce rate. Hindu have the lowest, and the unaffiliated are about in the middle.
Wow.
So you're hitting an audience, Todd, where I've gone through a divorce, you've gone through a divorce, and in the Christian community, it's a black and white thing.
That's right.
Did you face that?
100%. Okay, so let's talk about that, because I think you're putting your finger right on the wound. I'm gonna have to pick on the church a little bit to give my answer.
Sure.
And when I pick on the church, I think I'm picking on American Christian culture.
Okay.
And just this idea of church sort of being this pristine. It's like, how are you doing today? And everybody says fine. And the answer is, of course you're not. Not if you're being honest.
Right.
Everybody's going through something. Well, I was in that world, and I just never thought, here's what I thought about divorced people. Oh, one of y'all did something wrong. One of you's probably going to be better off away from that person. Sorry for the kids, but they'll be better off in the long run. Good luck. And then you move on back with your day.
Yeah.
And pastors get up and they just preach about, well, here's what marriage is supposed to be. And here's your only reason you can go get a divorce. And then we just move on with our day. until I went through it, I did not realize the gut punch of what divorce is. And to really answer what you've asked, when you're going through a divorce, you've got the mess, whatever that mess is that caused the divorce. And then once you make that decision, then you've got the ramifications of the divorce.
Yeah.
And when you talk to somebody, you don't know. Sometimes when you're in the ramifications, Christians will give you the Christianese answers. And you're like, well, that's a little too late for that. I'm in this section. And you're still processing this one. And it is a gigantic life event that I feel like the church does a really poor job of ministering, even understanding what is happening to the Christian, which is why when I created the podcast, I'm like, this is not going to be your traditional Christian. I'm not gonna talk about Genesis 1 and 2 of what a marriage is supposed to be and when you get a divorce. I'm going to talk about the mess of a divorce.
Right.
And actually, I break the podcast into: are you going through it? Are you sort of in it? And then are you recovering from it?
Right.
And so, it's a 17 episode podcast with all those little different milestones.
Yeah. In fact, I looked up some of the titles, which I think are fantastic. And I was going to say this for the end, but you cover things like, what about the kids? The first 90 days, losing friends, divorce and the church, co-parenting, grace and divorce. I mean, those words don't even often go together, but where is God's grace when we're going through it? We have to be submerged in it. So I want to just go back and say that your podcast came together because there was a need.
Facts.
First of all.
That's right.
And it's
an unmet need.
Who do I go to? Who do I talk to? Secondly, that need came about because you experienced the negative, the things that God won't give you more than you can handle, which don't even get me.
Don't get me going on that one.
That I know. That's about temptation. It is not about life events that are insurmountable.
God gives you stuff you can't handle all the time.
Because
on purpose.
If we could handle it,
we wouldn't need him, right?
Exactly.
That one drives me nuts.
What about God wants you to be happy?
That's part of the divorce issue that I deal with when I talk to people. Is there's this let's go back to the Christian culture. This idea that, well, we're doing it for the kids, or when I meet somebody who's divorced and they're just like, they quickly heal from their divorce and they're like, well, we're better off. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I take my promise to God, that covenant, that doesn't get trumped just because, oh, well, the kids are this tough little thing. You know what I liken it to? Here's another one of my pet peeves. I'm going to blend two pet peeves together. And that is when people say they're called. Well, I'm like, think about a pastor. Well, my wife and I have been praying about it, and we feel called to leave this church and go to this church. Well, then 2 years later, you talk to them, and are like, oh, this is a nightmare. We're leaving. And I'm like, well, weren't you called? Like, isn't a call mean, God didn't say a calling means everything's going to be great.
Right.
So if you're really called, then how are you uncalled? Like, what does an uncalling look like? Well, I feel the same. It's that same mentality happens with marriages. It gets tough. And it's like, well, don't I deserve to be happy? And the kids shouldn't see, us fighting this way. And like, well, no, I agree with that. Doesn't mean divorce is your answer. And so I think it's an interesting phenomenon. One, I do think a lot of people are breaking their covenants.
Yep.
And so the other person are reacting to that break. That's happening a lot. But also this loose holding on to that commitment, because the commitment didn't say everything's going to be great. It just says we are going to have a covenant promise that we're going to travel the ups and the downs together. And you can actually, I beg people in my first episode to save their marriage. Fight, fight, fight. I scream it in the podcast.
You really do. As I opened like the first part of your workbook or the resource, you truly are like, fight for your marriage. Like truly from the bottom of your heart.
You know why? A person we both know is the one who gave me that advice, and all I am doing is echoing it. Here's why.
I know what he is. I know what he said. I read it.
Yeah, it's because one day you're going to have a wayward kid. Your finances are going to be in ruin. You're going to be lonely. There are ripple and tsunami effects of a divorce.
Yeah.
One day you're going to be in it, and you're going to say, remember that thing that we were so mad about 5 years ago? Could I have got over that? Could I have given grace there? Could we have worked that out? And my thought is, if you gave it everything, then you could sleep with peace. Because bad things are coming. The grass is not greener after a divorce. It is not. You jumped out of the frying pan into the fire. You have a whole new set of problems. And if you don't fight, you will always second guess. And I don't want to go to my grave second guessing.
Mhm.
And so I want to offer people peace, because two things are going to happen. You might salvage your marriage,
Sure.
or you can sleep at night.
Right.
But you've got to fight. You have to fight. You can't just run away. And that's the other thing I find so funny. I talk to people, and there's this notion that when you file for divorce, you're just getting that person out of your life, and then your life's going to be fine. They won't be in it. Comical. It's not even how it happens.
It's forever.
It's forever. And the effects of that unyoking, which is why I called the UnYoked Podcast, it's this concept of, to keep the metaphor going, two oxen are being yoked together and they're
Right.
plowing. Well, even if you try to take a right or left, even if your row's not straight, you're still sort of going in the same direction. When you're unyoked, who's keeping that row? Or am I moving on? Or are you keeping the yoke on? Or am I keeping it on? Like, there's so many questions that happen in that unyoking. It takes a while to process that. It is very deep. And once again, you're still processing the mess, and then you're processing your new life. It's so complicated.
It is so complicated.
More, and once again, I think people just think it's going to be simple. They'll take their albums from college, we'll split the savings, and then we'll just move on with their life, and everybody will be better. Hogwash.
Right. Now, I do have a few caveats that we'll hit on, but I do want to also touch on the 5 things that you say. Here are some wise suggestions: counseling, community, addressing the blame game, which
Mhm.
one of my friends says, how do you spell blame? Be lame. Not one size fits all, and get a lawyer.
Yeah.
And you followed all of those.
Yes.
You did.
I think I did. I got to say, I think I unyoked. I fought hard. I fought till my health was in risk, honestly.
And then you went a mile longer.
And then I went one more mile. That's
Yeah.
what's the
I
guy
know.
we're talking about is
I know.
Steve.
Yep.
That's what he said. He goes, Todd, I want you to go till you can't go one more inch. So you can't crawl one more inch to save your family and your marriage. And when you're done, give me one more mile. One more mile.
I mean, Todd, were you just exhausted?
I was. My story with that is so interesting. I want to backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
I was actually in this building when this story happened. I was an elder at my church in leadership, where I had a big team that works for me. And so you know how this is. You're always privy to backstories. People come to you with their story. And I was surrounded by people who were going through tough stuff, right? Death, divorce, sickness, all the stuff. And I sat upstairs in this building, and I told a friend of mine, I go, why am I blessed? Like, why? I go, I've been married for, at that time, like 16 years. I had 3 healthy kids. My mom and dad lived 5 houses down.
Wow.
Her parents lived 5 miles away. I lived this Christianese, perfect, idyllic, Leave It to Beaver sitcom life. I've never had anything major happen to me. And or anybody in my family.
Well, it just all conglomerated into bam.
God, literally, I said, why me? Like, why? And it's sort of like, God's like, okay, well, buckle up, buddy. And so I went through my Job with my marriage. My dad had health problems, then passed away. My mom had health problems. I quit a job, started a job. I was starting the empty nest. Kids were moving out. All these major life events hit me in 18 months. And so I was exhausted. Matter of fact, I don't know if I've ever told you this or not, but I was not feeling good. Imagine that. You know, the body keeps score.
Yeah, it does.
And I was traveling out of the country, and I went to the doctor, and I said, I don't feel good, and I'm flying to Africa tomorrow. Give me a B12. And he looked at me, and he goes, hold on a minute. He came back. He goes, well, I got good news, bad news. He goes, you don't have the flu. He goes, you have diabetes. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, your blood sugar's 358 or something. He goes, you're going to the emergency room. And
by the way, you're not going on that trip.
Well, I talked him into it.
Oh my gosh.
But here's why I tell this story. Not that anybody needs to know my medical history. But I got back, filed for divorce. A lot of stuff happened in that trip. I filed for divorce. I can't make my blood sugar was 120. I had stress-induced diabetes. My body was fight or flight always, and it was killing me. It's killing me. Almost killed me. Yeah. And you go through it, and I was exhausted. Yeah. And this is something I tell people in the book is, unfortunately, when you're in one of the busiest times of your life, because your life is reshifting, rest. Like sometimes we try to think, oh, I'm going to go off and live my better life, or I'm going to start dating. People literally start dating within a month or two. I'm like, are you crazy? Are you crazy?
Like, what got you to the place where you're at? Because whatever got you there, you're taking right on with you.
That's 100% right.
Unless you address.
Hurt people, right. And all you're going to do is take that on. Right. So it's really funny. You haven't asked this yet, but that's just something I was going to tell you is, when did I decide I could do this? When I was finally at a point, I'm going to steal this line, is when you're speaking from your scars, not your wounds. Yeah. It took me a long time. I was speaking from my wounds. Sure. Or you're covering, or you're lying. Right. Or you're naive. Right. But it finally, you reach a point where you're like, they're scars. You can't hide them. All the things that happen to you affect you. But you can finally speak from a place where that you're not jabbing or just poking at situations or still feeling hurt.
Which one thing that you mentioned in the book is don't go on social media. I mean, you mentioned 3 don'ts, like no social media, no dating apps, and no dating into somebody else's arms right away. Yep. So I was just reading on divorce and on disabilities, actually. And there are posts after post after comment after comment after comment. And it's this husband and wife who have gone through a divorce. She's saying one thing, he's saying another. It's all out there for anyone to read, and their names are attached. I'm like, why air all of that?
What I can only see, I think I say this, I can only see bad. I don't see any good of being on social media. All I see is bad. And second of all, there's always a backstory, even with mine. Like I made a commitment to myself and even to my ex. I actually called her and said, I'm starting a podcast. I go, I just want to give you assurances. I will never talk about us, and other than a high level, right? Because it's not fair. I have my lens, she has her lens, and the truth somewhere in between. That's the facts. And so, no matter what happened, there's always that he said, she said. Which, by the way, I'm going to take a little side on that. It's one of the things that's unjust about this world is some things can never ever be right until heaven. Mm-hmm. And what I remember begging my wife right before it was one of these last ditch efforts. I said, we'll never have peace on this side of heaven because we'll never get in a room and then say, oh, well, you do that because I did this. I didn't know that. And then you get to work things out and you have to forgive and throw grace on it, but you can actually save a marriage with great communication. Mm-hmm. And when you're divorced, you lose the priority of that, and it'll never happen. And so we both sleep at night with our own story in our head of, well, they did that. So therefore, of course, I did this. And, you go tell your friends this, they go tell their friends that. And that's the danger of social media, is all you're getting is an out of context story from both people. You have to pick a side, which is why we lose so many friends. Because friends don't want to play that game. It's not their divorce. Right. And they just look up and like, I don't want to be a part of that, which now you've separated from your family. Church sort of hurts sometimes. Mm-hmm. And then now your friends leave you.
So I have so many things running through my head right now, Todd, because having gone through my own divorce, there's no divorce that is all one-sided. I mean, it may be 90-10, it may be 95-5, right. It may be 50-50.
It's never 100-0.
I have just as much responsibility in the failure of my first marriage as the other person. And I better take that responsibility because then I can grow. So there is 100%. No, if the person listening or watching right now is thinking, I'm just done, you have a part in the fact that marriage has fallen apart. And what are they doing? What are you doing at this moment to repair, to salvage, to save, and to actually enjoy a marriage that you may never have even known?
That's right. there is no saving a marriage. When you've reached out there, a lot of people who listen to my first episode of when they type into Google, should I get a divorce or can I get a divorce or are Christians allowed to get a divorce, right? All the things they type in. If you've reached that point, you're going to build a new marriage. You're not going to salvage your old one. You're burning it to the ground because that's what it's burnt. It needs to be burned.
It is a death to what you thought it would be. It doesn't mean it's a death to the vow or a death to what Christ has pulled together and can keep together.
Amen. But you've got to be willing. I think the first step, I know I reached that point of without having to get to all the nuances of my marriage and the marriage challenges. I did reach a point that just said this. I know we have a lot to work on, and I know I'm not perfect, but I lay it down at whatever it is. I will own it, and we will fix it, whatever that is. What happens is we normally fight over the fruit and never the root issue.
Sure.
We never get to the root because, she drinks too much. Well, yeah, she's drinking to numb because you do this. Well, I do this because of and you've got to get in front of a counselor.
That's right.
Someone who knows what questions to ask.
Right.
And you can start identifying and moving off the nonsense to get to the problems. And it's normally big fruit issues. I say the same thing. Communication, I've defined this. I don't know if I stole it. I'm sorry. But taking thoughts, feelings, and emotions and putting them into words. That's what communication
really good. Okay.
is.
Taking your thoughts, feelings, and words.
And emotions.
And emotions.
Putting them into words.
And let's remind ourselves that's my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, and emotions.
Not truth. I'm not spitting truth.
Correct.
I'm telling you my thoughts, feelings, and emotions. I'm putting them into words, listening, and you can talk that out. You can get through anything. You can get through anything. Now, I'll add, this is why we're supposed to be equally yoked as Christians. If we both have the same theology and mindset on, right? That we both know we have a covenant, there's a God.
Right.
But here's how I'm feeling right now. Well, you can, I think, get through anything. You can get through affairs. I mean, I don't know about abuse, right? But then again, if you can talk that through, why are you abusive or whatever? Like if two people want to work on their problems, it can be solved. It can work. One, not so much.
Now, I'm going to address two things. One is assumptions. And I think most damage happens within the church community when others assume they know what's going on in the home.
Facts.
My dad has said so many times, if you've not lived with that person 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with that marriage, then you have no idea.
Right.
And you show up and listen.
Yeah. She seems like such a nice lady at church.
Sure.
I'm sure she does.
Behind closed doors.
That's right.
Who knows?
Who knows?
The assumption part on the church has got to go. My idea, I just want to say it so emphatically. Stop assuming you know what happens in that home and show up and listen.
This is great advice. Okay, let's get into that. It's going to circle back to why church hurts.
Yeah.
I titled this podcast episode at first, it was Church When the Solution Hurts. Is what happens is pastors and the American church, our thought is, well, the best thing we have for you is church. So therefore it's our programs. So are you lonely? Well, just come work in Awanas. If if do more women's ministry, do more men's ministry, like that's going to help you. What the problem is, like a lot of churches really want to pour into small groups. Well, those small groups, they're not experts. To your point, they have assumptions. And so let's just say you and your spouse were going to a small group and now you're in a divorce. Well, are you even at the same church anymore?
Sure.
And if you are or aren't, are you in the same small group? Well, then now your small group's going to believe whatever. I have a prayer request, Well, I have a prayer request.
Gosh. The gossip line prayer request.
Yes. And it's like a mess. So a lot of us leave.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to a pastor and he goes, well, I don't see anywhere in the Bible where it shows that people would have left a church for a divorce. I'm like, well, I'm sorry you can't find the verse, but let me just tell you, it's awkward. It's awkward to be in the same building as your ex, knowing that everybody has a story. And so a lot of us leave. We just leave. And I'm making this number up, but if I have talked to 100 divorcees, 99 have been hurt by their church. And that means felt unheard, something was said rude, or they come into church and are like, y'all aren't even talking to me.
Yeah.
not even talking to me. And so small groups really aren't the answer, even though we sort of preach it. They're like, oh, yeah, well, that's your people who love you. Well, you can love you. It doesn't mean you're a good counselor.
Right.
I think divorce is way bigger of a problem that it takes a professional
Yeah.
to mend someone, or at least a professional program, if you will, which
Right.
is part of the podcast. Is I didn't get what I needed from a church, and I realized that a podcast may be the way that somebody can talk about divorce without being preached to about what
Right.
divorce is. So
Right.
that's the mess of it. And like you said, we touch all these episodes. We even talk about sex. Like
Right.
we're not. I don't avoid anything. It's like these
You
are all
can't.
your things you're going to go
These
through.
are all
and
relational
good luck
issues.
talking about that at your Sunday school on Sunday morning.
So how can churches be safer? Because you say community is important, but be careful who you talk to.
Yeah.
So
Keep your circle tight.
yes. And if you're in a circle, I want to say, be responsible for that.
Yeah, good
Like,
point.
if someone entrusts you with their words or with their story, stay quiet.
That's right. That's right.
Nobody else needs to know it. It's their
Yeah.
story to tell.
And that's another matter of fact, I just thought of this. That's another problem with why you lose so many friend groups.
Yeah.
Because if the woman is talking to the woman and they have pillow talk, then it comes back like, well, I didn't know she's talking about me. And it gets messy. I think a lot of people just don't want to be involved in that. So your friends go silent.
And so the way to shut that down is to say, I'm hearing you speak about so-and-so. I'm not going to be a part of that conversation, and
Right.
then walk away.
That's right.
Because I'm not going to be involved with the gossip ring.
That's right.
And be a safe and trustable person.
Right.
Another thing I wanted to talk about is the whole thing on domestic violence. Well, first, I found another statistic that talked about the reasons that people are divorcing.
Okay.
And it's number one, lack of commitment. They're just
I know
not
that.
committed.
Okay.
Yep.
I follow that.
Another one is the affairs or adultery.
Yeah.
Another one is we married too young.
Yeah. And I find
We've
that's
just
so
grown apart.
interesting.
I'm like, well, who was doing the growing?
Yeah.
Would you have chosen?
That's a horrible excuse.
A huge one is disabilities. There are 1 in 5 families that are caring for a disabled loved one.
And so it adds stress to the
Yeah.
marriage.
So that goes up to about 80%, a current statistic said. And in fact, like I really relate to this one because along with autism, that was an autism diagnosis and a divorce statistic. And I'm not saying across the board that happens, but
Right.
you also have financial issues, therapy choices, you have comorbid syndromes, you have one person who's staying in the hospital for 30 days and then coming home. I mean, talk about communication challenges.
Right. You're in two people in survival mode.
Right.
Right. They normally don't bond well.
Right. Because you can't even sit down. So as I'm married now, remarried to my husband, we decide, is this a frustration because we're frustrated?
Okay.
Or is this something that we need to attend to because there is a problem?
Interesting.
We're spending money on therapies. We're spending money on rehab. We're spending money on stuff. Is this I don't want to spend the money because I'm afraid? Or is this we need to look at our finances and make some wiser choices?
Yeah.
Those are the things that you're talking about for communication.
Right. That's right. Not numbing, staying busy. And sometimes that's why there's high spikes in divorce when the kids grow up, right? Because all you're really doing is you're co-parenting. And when the co-parenting is over, it's like, who are you?
Right.
Who am I? And they're like, oh, well, we've grown apart because I'm really this person and they're that person. It's like, well, yeah, but you caused that.
Right. One of the things that you mentioned is divorce is a decision and a circumstance, but it's not your identity.
That's right.
How much of a divorce is caused by a lack of one knowing their own identity?
Oh, this is big. This is big. Okay.
How much time do we have?
Yeah, no, this is it's a great topic. And matter of fact, I'm going to give you a little backstory to preface my answer. I called this the UnYoked Podcast, but I realized quickly that a lot of people who are past the divorce, you just, no one wants to live in that space. You want to move on. And so some people are like, oh, I'm past that. A lot of my friends actually didn't even listen. They told me, they go, yeah, I'm past that. That's for newbies. And I was, what am I going to say? Go listen. But I really wanted to shake them. Like, I can tell you're not healed. Go listen. Well, as people would listen, they would call me and say, I just listened to episode number 7. I just broke up with the person I'm dating. You said something that I realized that is not the person I should be dating. I just went back to therapy. I just pulled over in my car and bawled for 30 minutes.
Fantastic.
Like all that, right? Because we move on too quickly because we're either moving away from pain or we're trying to go find our new spouse thinking, oh, we lost the spouse. Therefore, if I just find somebody else that's not as bad as that one, my life will be better.
Forgetting that there's that invisible
And
U-Haul
admitting
that
that-
you're going to walk right
That's
down
right.
the aisle with.
You're the common denominator.
That's right.
So what I've changed the podcast to Unyoked Living is this idea of like you're unyoking, but there's a life afterwards. And the life isn't just to find a new spouse, and it's not to just learn how to move around with the limp of the divorce, being divorced and feeling divorced. But the reality is, when you're unyoked, it's you and God. Like you can really spend time learning who you are, looking backwards, fixing things, and instead of giving a spouse a priority, you can give yourself that priority. I've never known more about myself. I've never had a clearer head than I have right now in my life. And of course, I also empty nest and divorce at the same time, so I got a double whammy where I walk into an empty house and I'm like, what can I do? I can sulk. I could just date to just give me something to do, which I've done. I've done all the phases.
Sure.
I've done a lot of right and a lot wrong. But I finally come into peace. Like I know myself. I know what I want. I know what my goals are. Now I know who I want to co-yoke with later because I know who I am, and you just don't know that stuff. That's why I don't like the phrase people say, well, I just want to get back to being myself. I'm like,
You're never going to get back
You'll
there
never-
because
you'll never
this is
get
a
there.
trauma that has changed your life.
that you'll change your life, and you
Right.
don't know what it's like to be unyoked, which a lot of people are codependent, so they'll just go right into the new relationship and they'll never put in the work.
Right.
I've been told by some people, oh, put in the work. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean you read a book? Does it mean you...
Who have you been in a relationship with
Yeah.
that will reflect back to you? You know, this is really what I'm seeing and I'm concerned. And how do you hear that?
That's right.
If you're defensive, then we've got 2 issues to address.
That's right. Well, this is very interesting. Women tribe better than men. They just do. Y'all do a way better job of your Bible studies and wine night and movie night. And, I think women are very attentive. Like I've actually seen this as somebody's like, oh, I got to go to my friend's house. Today's the 2-year anniversary of her big trip to Malibu with her ex-husband. Like, what? I'm a guy. Like, I'm lucky to get it's your birthday. Hey, I heard your birthday today, buddy.
Here's your cigar.
Yeah, nothing. Like, guys just don't do that. And so what happens is you sit alone and you just make up your little story in your head of what happened. My wife's the bad person. I'm the good,
Right.
or I messed up, but I've said I'm sorry and I'm moving on. But you have to put people in your life. You have to have people, whether that's accountability or just listen. And I think that American male culture is so John Wayne-ish. It's so you're on your own. You can do this. It's just you versus the world, and it's so dangerous.
Yeah.
Especially for a single divorced person. You've got to have community.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I try to scream in the podcast is I want men to. I don't know. I don't feel like right after a divorce, church is the best place. I really don't.
Yeah, and you even say that in the book. Like you can have worship you can have it online. You can.
That's right.
You
Take a
can-
break if you need to.
Yeah.
Breathe.
I did.
Did you really?
A year.
Oh, I'm over a year.
Yeah, I did.
Well
Well, it
over a
was
year.
a 2-year. It was a 2-year thing
Yeah.
after my son was diagnosed years and years ago because I couldn't go without having someone say something to try and fix it. I'm like, stop
That's right.
trying to fix my situation.
Can-
It's not fixable right now.
Or come sit with me. The best part of Job's friends is they just came and sat. That was their best move they made. This is when they opened their mouth. This is when they screwed up.
And my
If
daughter
they just
said
would
the
have
same
sat
thing.
with them.
That's right. She goes, Mom, when you finally shut up, I started to listen.
Oh, that was a great line.
Yeah, it wasn't
still in
at the
that line.
time.
No, it wasn't. No, but
But
it's-
you know what? It was.
I'm still in that for sure. Okay, so I use this analogy all the time. This is why church hurts.
Mm.
We're going to use the car wreck analogy. I think I put this in my book. But if you've been in a car wreck and if you survive, you're bloody, you're limping, and you walk in, and the church is supposed to be our hospital, right? That's what we say. We're our
We
hospital
so
for
say that,
sinners.
but
Yeah. So you come in limping, and people look at you and like, hey, how are you today? You're like, I'm bleeding. Like, is that not an indicator? Like, what do you mean? Well, how am I doing? I just got a divorce. And it's like, well, you should go to the men's retreat this weekend.
no.
Why? How is that going to help me? Your program, how is that going to help me? I'm dealing with something that y'all are talking about how to be a better husband. I think that's the theme this weekend. Not for me.
Yeah.
And then the pastor or the doctor is up on stage telling you, hey, Genesis 1-2, cars aren't supposed to be wrecked. It's like, yeah, I don't need that. That's not helping me.
They still
Don't tell
get
me. They wreck. I've been in a wreck. I'm bloody. Who here is going to minister to me? And the answer is, I didn't find it. Didn't find it at all.
What does minister?
Well, I would have never said counseling until I was in marriage counseling,
Yeah.
and I saw even though it didn't work, it didn't take. There was so much benefit to
Yeah.
that I've kept it going since. Like just paying somebody. And people say, oh, I can't afford it. It's like, well, it are cheaper than divorces.
Yeah, which are between 15 and 20,000 lower end.
Yeah, no, it's expensive to get a divorce, and it's a lifetime of expense.
Yeah.
But
and then the vow. We've got to go back to the fundamental. The vow before God. I don't care the expense. If it's a vow,
that's right.
Look
Then
at the
you do
Old
what you-
Testament. What happened when you break those vows?
That's right. Pray for money. Pray for manna. God will find a way.
He will find a way.
He will. What happened with us? We got some free counseling.
Yeah.
So we were in crisis, and people were willing to help with that. So
It's amazing when you get to the end, you don't give up. You say, Lord, I need this.
I'm doubling down. Yeah.
And now I'm going to ask for the help. And God shows up in those moments.
God shows up. That's how I met our common friend.
Yeah.
I think you told us we should meet. I didn't.
He's phenomenal.
I literally went to lunch with him, and I sat down. I don't know that guy from nothing. And God, if there's ever been a providential meeting in my life, it was that day.
I just want to clone him. I'm like, you
there-
cannot die.
Everybody needs a Steve in their life.
Right.
And I think that's sort of what I'm answering your question without going into our personal history here. God will send somebody. God will put that ram in the thicket. And Steve was mine.
Yeah.
I went to lunch with a stranger, and by the end I had vomited everything that was going out, and I had to go home and tell my wife, I just told a stranger everything.
Mhm.
And she was like, that was fine. And she was okay with it. And then we started using him for counseling. But that's part of the reason I started the podcast is not everybody has a Steve in their life.
I know.
And so I was like, half the book is me I should pay Steve my royalties, because it was him and a lot of other people that God put in my life that were given wise counsel. And then you go off and you see people who, unfortunately, because the church has given us Genesis 1 and 2,
Right.
The world gives us the other answers. And the truth in this middle is I want people to have a Christian lens. We do serve a holy, wonderful God, but churches lean too much to truth.
Black and white.
And I wanted mercy.
Yeah.
I just wanted mercy. I don't want somebody to hear me. And so that's what the book and the podcast is me saying to Christians, not telling them, here's what God says we can get a divorce. I'm actually trying to hear them. And I'm actually trying to tell them stuff they'll never hear from the pulpit.
Yeah.
And that is, Bible only mentions these two little things, but I'm telling you,
Mhm.
if this or this or this is happening to you, you have permission.
What do we say to someone who doesn't have a safe person around them, doesn't have a counselor at the time, is praying for that?
Mhm.
What do we do?
Yeah, interesting. I really do believe that our God is a God who provides miracles, right? So sometimes in my life, he's brought someone in that I did not even expect. But it's really fun. Sometimes I believe there's a little bit of testing that goes on with the trust issue of,
There should be.
yeah, if you can't trust them with a little, you certainly can't trust them with a lot. And I think too, sometimes our family members and even our friends, they're judging.
Mhm.
And they're trying to fix, they're trying to speak back into you. And those people are tough to be around because they're trying to be on the right side of a divorce or the right side of whatever issues when we sometimes.
Like if is there a right side?
If there's a right side. And we need to surround ourselves with people who are willing to listen and just be there, But when they do offer advice, it's actually sound. It's my litmus test. Like, does this person offer good advice, or is it retaliatory? Like, that's the other thing. I feel like sometimes friends, right? Because we're talking about who can we trust. Friends, there's different classifications of friends.
Mhm.
There's friends who they're great to go if you want to go to Mexico. They're
Mhm.
wonderful. But if you need to make a wise life decision, probably not the person to go to. And I think when you surround your people with yourself with the happy people, it's a little dangerous because they're on team you. Whatever it takes you to be happy and smile, they'll vote for that.
Which is that making you better or them happy?
Them happy. That's right. And so this idea is like we need wise people in our life.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean we need to walk around and go to seminaries and hang around, wise professors, right? It's not so much the truth. We need more of the mercy friends. And so this is why I don't always believe that churches are answered, because the pastor up there is preaching truth.
Mhm.
And quite frankly, the people, the flock is echoing that your pastor's personality. It happens all the time
Right.
because he's influencing the staff are influencing the small groups. And so you just get a lot of the echoing of that pastor's personality. And so beg people for counseling if you can afford it, or you even at a place. Not everybody lives in Dallas, Texas, where they have 100 people. I could throw out
Right.
a rock and hit 10 counselors right
Right.
now. And some people live in a small town in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
They don't have that. But we have Zoom.
Mhm.
We have ways. There are ways to do it. There are websites that you can get find
Yes.
free counseling. There's plenty.
Yeah.
And then, pray. Let the Lord know. The Lord knows. And he is not this gray-headed guy in the sky who's just looking down like, so you're getting a divorce? Well, shame on you. I said, don't do that. That's not him. He knows your pain. And guess what? Even if you're wrong, okay, even if after a divorce you were wrong, because we all have that little bit, like you mentioned earlier, we all have that our part. God is a God of mercy and justice and restoration. Ask forgiveness from him. Offer it to your ex. I know it's hard when it's fresh to offer it to your ex. It's so hard because you can't even see. You have to. You mentioned one of the episodes I have is on grace.
Yeah.
Somebody told me, you ought to change that to forgiveness. And I go, no, I don't want to. Forgiveness is a fruit of grace.
Yeah.
It's not, forgiveness is an issue. We have to understand this grace so we can hand it out here. So I like people in my life who think that way, who think wise, but are really, really quiet. You know that they've chewed on it, they've lived it. And here's the deal. Here's the real truth of this answer. You know who I can minister to now? People who are divorced. I've done it. I look at people. I've actually apologized to some people because when they went through a divorce, what did I do for nothing? I judged, or I blew it off.
It's so humbling.
Yes, and now my eyes, when somebody calls me, I had a call this week. Somebody listened to my podcast. They're like, I just filed with my wife and whatever. And I was like, before I would have answered that call so differently. And so look for somebody in your life who's been through it. They may be real silent, and you may not think you now have a bond because they went through that trauma. And maybe go have that conversation with somebody, and maybe they have an attentive ear they could have never told you before because you weren't ready.
What's interesting is my dad was redoing his series on Ephesians. I think it was Ephesians, and part of the series was on marriage. And he goes, my preaching on marriage now, after 30 years of preaching, because I'm not even going to the old notes. Not that they're wrong, but his heart and grace and understanding of so much more than just the black and white has been expanded because of the pain of his daughters going through divorces. I also would add to that, if there is that person in Kansas who doesn't have any friends, doesn't have the family, or has voices against them, some of the things that were really helpful for me, I went and sat on a bookstore floor because I couldn't afford the books, and I just looked up as much as I could on what is a healthy person, what are the qualities to look for, look at Proverbs, the book of wisdom. Stay in the book of wisdom, so then you know what to look for. And then always David says, search my heart, oh God. search me in every way, Lord, so that you will bring me to the appointed people and you will bring them to me when I'm ready to take it in and when there's wisdom to grow from it.
And that I think summarize what your dad said. When you go through tragedy, your grip's just starting to loosen.
Yeah.
You don't hold on to what you used to hold on to, even though God's truth is an important thing to hold on to. But I just want to scream that mercy. Once we've been through some stuff, your mercy attentiveness goes way up.
Yeah.
And then you can find other people who will see you. God will bring you those people.
He will.
Who they've been through it too. And now that's my whole goal, is to pass it on, because for what's the silver lining? I end my podcast, the last episode of season 1 was, what's the silver lining of divorce? Why? Well, the answer is to help people. Like, that's the whole answer. God didn't. I always despise well, you're better off now, or God's got somebody better for you. No, that's not the way to look at it. Like, it's like anything that draws me to God is good. Anything that takes me away is bad. We live in a broken world. I got a divorce. It wasn't the way God intended, but He's a merciful God, and there's a lot of life left to live.
Absolutely.
Right? And God will put people in your path that will bring you your manna and bring you truth and can put that arm around you. Yeah, I fully believe it. And that may not all be in your church. May not be. And that's okay.
And it's in His time.
That's right.
So now we're going to touch on the hottest topic.
Okay,
here.
let's do it.
And that is the whole issue of abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Domestic violence, statistically, 24% of people will divorce because of domestic violence.
Okay.
Which I think that's because there's so much fear involved. I know someone who went to the elders, who went to the pastor, who did all the biblical things, saying, my kids are suffering. I'm suffering. I'm terrified. I've been threatened with my life. And that person was told, you need to be more submissive.
Yeah.
And you're highly demanding. And then what happened is the doctor, which most reported abuse cases come from either a school counselor or a doctor.
Okay.
The doctor noticed there was some bruising on one of the kids and said, you're shaking. The child has bruises. I need to call in our social worker.
Yeah.
And the mother was like, wait. I'm not going to call, because she was so terrified.
Of course she's not.
But the doctor made the call.
Right. Not the pastor.
No. Right. And in fact, that church never, ever even acknowledged that there was a problem. So when you have children that are being hurt and you have a person, male or female, who is more married to their attitude, anger, and abuse than they are to the commitment of marriage.
That's right.
That marriage is not going to work. No. Because they're married to their behavior and their...
Nor should it.
No, and it's more damaging to stay in it for the children.
100%. All right, so I'm gonna repeat this, and I'm having to repeat it to myself over and over and over. And that is this. Churches, especially Protestant, conservative American churches, have a high view of God and Scripture, which is healthy. Okay?
Fabulous. Right?
I'm not saying that's not good. Kudos. But Jesus was full of mercy and truth. Full. It wasn't 50-50. It was full. And if we put the same effort into truth and mercy as we do truth, we would have some empathy. If a woman...
And we'd have full churches.
If a woman's getting beaten, leave that sucker. Get you a lawyer, call the police, put his rear in jail, file for divorce.
But I have to also say, if you don't show up in court with an axe in your head and blood came...
Oh, it's another problem, yes.
Which the problem is, it's assumed that physical abuse is the reason. In all abuse, emotional abuse happens, whether you're hit or whether you're hit with words.
That's right. Belittled, right.
Gaslighting, controlled, having the keys taken away, having your bank account shut off.
That's right.
I mean, when you get so controlled, that's a form of abuse.
The old me would have been a lot more theological. I would have split a lot of theological hairs. Is that a word? Is that the way to
Sure.
say that? And now that my mercy side is growing,
Yeah.
I'm like, Lord, if that person
Yeah.
has begged and cried themselves to sleep and whatever they've done to endure the hell they're going
Uh-huh.
through, if they walk away because they have to for their sanity,
And
for their
safety.
kids, or
Mhm.
safety, if the theology's wrong, sorry. But why would they? I don't think God would ask you to endure that. I think that's the American church saying, "Don't get a divorce. Don't get a divorce. Staying married is the most important thing we can." How about your health? How about your
Right.
sanity? How about your kids? Like, God cares about that stuff too. And so I've just backed way off.
Yeah.
Now I don't like, we grew apart and God just wants me to be happy. There's a lot of bull
Right.
and false flags of, why I'm getting a divorce. But if there's any kind of abuse or anything that someone has done they're not in the marriage anymore. Like you said, they're married to something else, or they're bringing in so much damage, they're not wanting to fix it. I'm like, I don't think God, I mean, I know there's people who would argue, pastors that would argue. I don't think God's asking you to stay in that. I don't see any scripture that says that's what you must endure that.
No, and I also think it's not like I'm controlled because he won't let me spend $4,000 a month. Okay,
Not
come on.
that.
That's stupid, and you're going to be accountable for it.
That's right.
But when a person has fought and gone as far as they can go and a mile further,
That's right.
and there is a spouse that is unwilling, and there's been a third person involved, accountability. I mean, at some point, there's grace for that space.
I say go in peace. I'm not going to go yesterday in peace. That's what I'm trying to. I realize, how when you talk to people, or like, let's say you're writing a book, or they say you're supposed to have an avatar, like who are you talking to? Well,
Yeah.
you know who mine is. I have this imaginary, I'm going to call her mid to upper 30s, lives in Kansas.
Who you're talking to.
Who I'm talking, and she's married to a deacon at a local Baptist church.
Oh my.
But he beats her out when he's drunk on the weekends. That's who I'm talking to. Where she feels like the optics won't let her get a divorce. She tells the pastor's going to give that bad advice of like, well, what did you do to make him do that? And what kind of home are you placing for that poor man that he feels like he has to drink? All that attitude. And I want to give her permission to leave, leave, and rebuild her life.
I like how you say separate too. Sometimes a separation gives you some air, and then you can reconsider and then maybe possibly that space with time and a counselor will bring you back together as each person works on this.
I agree in separation except for affairs.
Sure.
The problem with affairs is when you're laying in bed and your spouse right there, they're like, well, you're finding a way to cheat somehow. And when you separate, you've just green lighted it. And now, even if you save your marriage, now you've got a whole new 3 months, 1 year problem. Like, what did you do during that time? Right. It creates new problems. So
and
affairs and separations, I'm out on. But all the other stuff, breathe. Yeah. Don't be in a hurry. Because once again, you're jumping out of I use the 9/11 metaphor of like when you're in that burning building at 9/11 and the people who chose to jump. It's, I'm gonna die.
Am I gonna burn?
Am I gonna burn? But you got to do something. And I think that's it. Divorce is not as simple as, well, I'm just gonna jump and I'll be okay. No. Your gravity. Your life is gonna be changed in such a giant way. So I don't want to romanticize divorce. I want, once again, fight. But once you jump, we do serve. This is why I go to Christians. We serve a God. He's a God of restoration. If your marriage not restored, you can be restored.
Well, like you just said, I know myself better than I ever did before. You have hobbies. You have set your house up. I've been there.
Yeah.
And my husband and I have seen how you've set it up strategically because you're going to enjoy life as God has rebuilt you from a devastating life experience that is with you the rest of your life.
And isn't it neat? Well, thank you. It's been a journey. It's a crawl, walk, run.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, this building means so much to me. There's so many relationships I have in here, so it's nice coming back. But another person in this building told me this, and it was a big one. He goes, when you're after your divorce, he goes, there's this window. He goes, it's not like everybody's timeline's the same, but here's their phases. You're in the gut punch, fetal position on the kitchen floor for a while. Then finally you can crawl. And he goes, you're going to feel divorced. You're going to feel when you walk into church, you feel like you have a big D on your chest.
You just feel like you fit nowhere.
You fit nowhere. You're ashamed. You just feel like you're divorced. He goes, then you're going to finally feel single. And I remember that happened to me at year 2 to 3. I just felt single. And he goes, there's something past that. He goes, you're finally going to feel like you. And that's where I finally got to that where I don't even feel single. I don't even think of myself. I just wake up and I'm like, I am a being. I'm a child of God. Yeah. I don't have these responsibilities that I used to have. And it's just me and him. Yeah. So I try to live a life on mission, whatever that is, whatever that mission is. I'm not going to have to be spiritual. It is for me because my career, it is that. But this is why I want people to have unyoked. I want them to learn unyoked living. How to live
a well-lived life.
A well-lived life. You may have a new spouse. You may not, but that's not the finish line.
Right.
That getting remarried, even though it's important, I hope I'm remarried.
Yeah.
But I don't walk around the lens of what do I need to do to get married.
Right.
I'm living a life that's way different. It's me and God and my family. Like I'm leaving some important things out, but it's so wonderful because you make decisions differently. You don't have the weight of being yoked to someone else's. I mean, it's hard being married.
Yeah. Even John said to me the other day, because he's always asking about, are you married? Are you married? He goes, oh, I think marriage is hard. I'm like, you just said the smartest thing. And it's hard when you go into it not a whole person. You're saying God has healed and made me more whole. And now whether I have a partner to share in that wholeness with or not, I can enjoy life.
And you can find a better partner when you're whole because now you know what a whole partner looks like.
Absolutely. So I could talk to you for another 4 hours. But Todd, this unyoked choices. So how can people find you, get a hold of this, get a hold of your resources, hear the podcast?
Sure. Yeah. Well, toddturner.com. I've just put everything there. So there's going to be links. But on Apple, Spotify is the UnYoked Podcast. And then on Amazon, and you go to toddturner.com, I have links to Amazon.
Yep.
And I'm writing a new book right now. It's almost out, but it's a workbook for women.
Really?
I'm debating if I'm doing one for men because I feel like women are more apt to open a workbook. I think it's a
they
personality.
Might be, but you know what? I would encourage you to do the one for men too.
I hope
because you offer a good perspective.
I think so. It's really funny. I picked the women because I think they want it. Sure. And so I did that. But I really went and looked at my YouTube channel the other day, and it says it was instead of 50-50, it was like 70-30 men. Really? So I think I am going to have to aim at men a little bit more. Yeah. But my avatar is a woman.
Sure.
So I started in that direction. But yeah, toddturner.com. And I just started a new season. I was going to only do 17 episodes and walk away from this. But I've had enough people come to me and say, I really would love a woman's perspective.
Sure.
And so I found a really good Christian friend of mine, and she and I are recording 17 more episodes where we just take a topic and we cross-talk it. So there is a woman's perspective. Just kicked off season 2 just the other day, so it's coming out.
That's so great. It's so needed. And so as we wrap up, if you are making a decision or if you're considering a decision of being married or walking away, please look up Todd's stuff because you have walked through it fully. And you have some great things to offer. So thanks for your time.
Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it. It's always good being around.